Good afternoon. In the past, we've talked about scarcity and the fact that we have unlimited wants, but limited resources to meet those unlimited wants. So, when we talk about scarcity, we have to talk about how governments or economies deal with scarcity. How are they going to meet the needs and wants of their consumers, of their citizens, with the limited resources that we have? Economists have identified three key economic questions. There are lots more questions, but these are the three key ones that you have to deal with when you are dealing with scarcity. The first one is, well, what is it we're going to produce? What goods and services should be produced? So, what to produce is an allocation question. An allocation means how are we going to use our resources? How are we going to allocate them? Okay. If I'm going too fast in this video, please feel free to stop and rewind. You just can't fast forward. So the first economic question, and they have to be in this order. What is an allocation question? So you're going to go through and you're going to fill these blanks in, and then we're going to do some stuff with this tomorrow. So societies must decide between the mix of goods and services it will produce. We used to be a goods oriented society. We now are more a services oriented society. We are producing fewer goods in this country because we have outsourced many of those products. And a lot of the products that we buy now, as you know, are produced in other countries, either by US firms or by other firms that are owned by, like, for example, Chinese companies or Taiwanese or, any other type of thing. It depends on what it is that you're buying, really. All right, so we talked about guns and butter in the last unit. And this kind of goes with it is in the fact that we have to make choices. We only have limited resources. So are we going to produce more goods or more services? Often, but not always, this choice depends on natural resources it possesses as well as its factors of production. And we're going to talk about factors of production tomorrow, later in this period. And so, natural resources, every country has a different amount of natural resources that it has available to it. For example, we do have oil in this country, but we tend to buy more oil from foreign based oil sources. For example, I think 40% of our oil comes from Saudi Arabia, for example. All right. And so some countries have more access to certain resources. And so those resources for those countries are going to be a lot cheaper. Some, like the US, resolve this problem by allowing producers and consumers to decide. Yet in Cuba and North Korea, even though it is starting to change in Cuba and a little bit in North Korea, but not a lot, consumers play little or no part in this decision. It's more about government ownership of the resources, government ownership of the decisions, and consumers, they just basically are stuck buying whatever it is that the government has determined that they should be buying. So societies must also decide how much of those things to produce. And this depends on our wants. It depends on the needs of the society at the time. For example, are we fighting a war? Are we in peacetime? Have we had a natural disaster? Those types of things. Okay, so the first economic question was what? And that was an allocation question. The second economic question, after you decide what it is, you have to decide, well, how are those goods and services going to be produced? And this is an efficiency question because you want to use the resources that you have in the most efficient way possible. Because you don't want to start a business and say, I want to lose $3 million this year, right? No one wants to do that. So they'd have to use the resources that they have efficiently so that they can maximize their profit. All economic systems must determine how goods and services will be produced. So they're looking at the resources that they have again and determining how can we use these in the most efficient way possible to produce the things that our citizens or our consumers want and need in the most productive way. So answering this is often dependent on natural resources as well, kind of getting back to what I said. What do you have access to? And for some, it's labor intensive. For others, it's more machine intensive. For example, I went to the outlet mall this past weekend and I saw in one of the shoe stores, and it's the ECCO store, so I don't know if that's pronounced Echo or whatever, but anyway, they said 210 pairs of hands touch every single pair of shoes. So those shoes are going to be much more expensive than a pair that is just produced on a machine within seconds. So our first question was what? That's an allocation question. Our second question was how, and that is an efficiency question. And our third question is for whom. And this is a distribution question. So after we have decided what and how, we have to decide, all right, who is going to get these things? All economic systems must determine which goods and services will be available for public and for private usage. How should goods and services be distributed among people in society? In other words, should it be equal? Should everybody have access to these things? Or should it be by ability to pay? So, for example, if I'm a company that produces $20 million yachts, I know that there are very few people that can afford to pay for that, and so I'm going to use my resources so that I'm probably only producing maybe one or two of those a year. Okay. Because not very many people can afford those. However, if I'm producing milk, all right, most people, not everybody, but most people have the ability to purchase milk. And so milk is going to be much cheaper. All right. So how should their goods be delivered to them? So, like, are there distribution systems in the infrastructure, like railroads and highways? But now this is starting to shift. Amazon is one of the biggest disruptors in the market when it comes to the distribution question, because they revolutionized the market. Because no longer do we have to wait a week or two to get something. If you have Amazon Prime, then things will get there in 2 days with no shipping costs. But there is a fee to Amazon Prime. Now, Walmart has responded to that, and they now have 2 day shipping, and it's free shipping, but there is no membership fee like there is for Amazon Prime. So we're going to start to see other companies, I think, start to do that, because Walmart and Amazon are companies that really kind of set the tone for what other companies are going to be doing if they want to stay competitive. All right, so we talked about the 3 economic questions: what, how, and for whom. And there's going to be a couple multiple choice questions that you need to answer at the end of this video. And then once you have finished this, you may go on to the next video.